My name is Sarah Miller, and I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn as the one I recently experienced. Working as a software engineer at a renowned technology company in the United States has always been my dream. I dedicated myself tirelessly, and my work was recognized for my competence and innovation. However, everything changed when I was abruptly fired after repeatedly rejecting the advances of my supervisor, Eric Williams. That fateful morning, Eric called me into his office. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, with that tone of authority that always bothered me. I sat in the chair in front of his desk, trying to remain calm. "What happened, Eric?" I asked, already aware that something was wrong. He sighed heavily before continuing. "We have received some complaints about your performance. Unfortunately, we will have to terminate your contract with the company." My mind spun. Performance complaints? I knew this was a blatant lie. This is a joke, right? My performance has always been exemplary, and you know it. Eric looked at me with a look that mixed frustration and irritation. "Sarah, don't make this any harder than it already is. I've already made my decision." I left the office feeling wronged and humiliated. Angry tears streamed down my face as I cleaned my desk. My colleagues looked at me with sympathy, but no one dared question Eric's decision. It was then that I decided I would no longer be a silent victim. That night, at home, I began documenting every interaction I had with Eric. I knew I needed to gather concrete evidence to expose his abusive behavior. I remembered a conversation I had with Rachel, a colleague who had mentioned having similar problems with Eric. The next day, I met Rachel at the company cafeteria. "Rachel, can I talk to you?" I asked, trying to hide my anxiety. She looked at me with apprehension. "Of course, Sarah. What happened?" I explained everything to her, from Eric's inappropriate advances to my unfair dismissal. "We need to do something, Rachel. We can't let him continue abusing his power." Rachel sighed, clearly nervous. "I had problems with him too, but I'm afraid of losing my job. I understand your fear, but if we don't do anything, he will continue to harm other people. Please help me gather evidence against him." Rachel pondered for a moment before agreeing. "It's okay, Sarah. I'll help you." With Rachel by my side, I began talking to other colleagues who might have similar stories. Tom, a systems analyst who had always admired my courage, also joined us. We formed a support network, sharing our stories and documenting all of Eric's suspicious interactions and abuses of power. "We need a plan," Tom said during one of our secret meetings. "We can't just go to HR with our complaints. They'll probably try to cover it all up." "I agree," I replied. "I will seek out a lawyer who specializes in corporate injustice. We need legal guidance to ensure our allegations are taken seriously." That's how I found Jake Thompson, a dedicated lawyer committed to justice. When I explained my situation, he was immediately interested in helping. "Sarah, your case has the potential to make a significant impact. We will gather all the evidence we can and build a solid case." Jake also offered me emotional support, something I didn't expect. "I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. Don't give up." With the support of Rachel, Tom, and Jake, I started to feel like I could really make a difference. The anger and determination that had driven me was now fueled by the hope of justice. I knew the path would be difficult, but I was willing to face all the challenges to expose Eric's abusive behavior and the company's systemic failures. The investigation was just beginning, but I could already see a light at the end of the tunnel. I would no longer be a silent victim. I would be the voice that echoes for all those, like me, who have been wronged and silenced. When I was fired, I was filled with a mixture of anger and determination. I knew I couldn't face this battle alone, so I started looking for allies within the company. That's how I approached Rachel, an extremely talented programmer who I've always admired. We sat down for lunch at a cafe near the office and, after some time of conversation, I decided to open my heart. "Rachel, I need to tell you something very serious," I said, trying not to show how nervous I felt. Rachel looked at me, surprised. "Of course, Sarah. What's going on? I explained to her the entire situation with Eric, from the unwanted advances to my dismissal. Rachel listened intently, visibly shaken. "You're not alone in this, Sarah," she replied, a gleam of determination in her eyes. "I've also been in similar situations with Eric, but I never had the courage to talk about it." From that moment on, Rachel became my first ally. We started gathering evidence and documenting everything: emails, messages, anything that could be used against Eric. But we knew we would need more support to build a solid case. It was then that I decided to approach Tom, a systems analyst who I have always admired for his integrity and professionalism. I met Tom in the office cafeteria. "Tom, can I talk to you for a moment?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course, Sarah." "What do you need?" he replied, curious. I told him the whole story, just like I did with Rachel. Tom was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "This is unacceptable, Sarah," he said finally. "I always knew Eric was a problem, but I never imagined it would be this bad. I'm in. I'll help you expose this guy." With Rachel and Tom by my side, we formed a support network. We met after hours in a co-working space to share our stories and continue documenting all suspicious interactions and abuses of power. With each meeting, we became more determined to move our mission forward. One day, during one of these meetings, Rachel brought up an idea. "What if we created a detailed dossier on Eric's behavior?" she suggested. "We can include all the evidence we have gathered so far and the testimonies of other colleagues." "That's a great idea, Rachel," I agreed. "Let's do this." We spent weeks working on the dossier, reaching out to other colleagues who also had stories to tell about Eric. Many were afraid, fearing reprisals, but over time, we managed to convince some to join us. "I never imagined so many people had gone through this," Tom said at one of our meetings. "Eric is a true predator. We need to make sure he never does this to anyone else again," I replied, feeling determination rising within me. The dossier began to take shape, and each new testimony only strengthened our cause. We were a team united by a common goal: to expose Eric and the company's systemic failures. We knew that the task would not be easy and that we would face many obstacles, but we were ready to fight. One night, as we were reviewing the latest exams, Rachel looked at me and said, "Sarah, no matter what, you were brave enough to take the first step. We're all here because of you." Those words touched me deeply. "Thank you, Rachel. I couldn't do this without you." With our dossier ready and our determination unwavering, we knew we were one step closer to justice. And this union between us was what gave us the strength we needed to continue, showing that, together, we could face any adversity. Once I decided to seek legal help, I realized I needed someone who not only knew the system, but who was also willing to fight with me against the injustices I faced. It was then that I met Jake Thompson, a lawyer specializing in corporate injustice. Our first meeting was marked by a mix of hope and apprehension. "Sarah, I understand that this situation is extremely difficult for you," Jake said, looking me in the eyes with a sincerity that comforted me. "But I want you to know that I'm here to fight alongside you. Let's build a strong case together." I felt relieved to have found someone so dedicated. Jake was not only a competent professional, but he also showed rare empathy. During our conversations, he guided me through each step, explaining how we should proceed to gather all the necessary evidence. "We need emails, messages, anything that proves Eric's inappropriate behavior," he explained to me. "Additionally, testimonies from colleagues will be crucial. Can you count on their support?" "Yes," I replied, thinking of Rachel and Tom, who had been by my side since the beginning. "They are willing to help." Jake didn't just offer technical support, he also cared about my emotional well-being. "Sarah, I know this is all very stressful. How are you handling the pressure?" "To be honest, it's been difficult," I confessed. "Sometimes it feels like the whole weight of the world is on my shoulders." He nodded, understanding. "We're going to get through this together. You have a solid support network, and that's essential. Anything you need, I'll be here." As the weeks passed, Jake became a crucial figure in my journey. He reviewed every detail meticulously, ensuring that our argument was irrefutable. I remember one night in particular when we were reviewing a set of compromising emails that I managed to recover. "This one," Jake said, pointing to a specific email. "It's clear evidence of Eric's inappropriate behavior. We need to include this in the dossier." I agreed, feeling a mixture of outrage and relief as I saw the evidence piling up. "I have a few more emails that I managed to retrieve. I'll forward them to you." Jake encouraged me to be resilient. "Sarah, you are an incredibly brave person. What you are doing here is not just for you, but for everyone else who has suffered at his hands." These words gave me strength to continue. Every meeting with Jake was an opportunity to reinforce my resolve. He not only dedicated himself to the case, but he also became a friend, someone I could trust completely. At one of the meetings, Jake brought news that brightened my day. "I've been able to contact an investigative reporter who can help raise awareness of your case. Her name is Lisa Harper." "Lisa Harper?" I asked, surprised. "She's renowned. This could really make a difference." "Exactly," Jake said, smiling. "She is interested in your story and wants to help expose the truth. We will set up a meeting with her to discuss next steps." The feeling that we were moving forward gave me a new wave of hope. With Jake by my side, I felt more prepared to face any obstacle. He always made a point of remembering that justice was on our side. "Sarah, never forget," he said once, holding my hand. "The truth always prevails. And we will make sure it does." With Jake, Rachel, Tom, and now Lisa, my support network was stronger than ever. Jake's dedication to my case not only helped me gather hard evidence, but also gave me the confidence to keep fighting. She was determined to expose Eric and the company's systemic failures, and with Jake's help, she knew she was on the right path to justice. Determined to ensure the truth is known to everyone, I contacted Lisa Harper, a renowned investigative reporter with an impressive track record of exposing corporate scandals. I knew I would need someone with her experience and tenacity to ensure my story had the impact it needed. After a few attempts to contact her, I was finally able to schedule a meeting with Lisa at a discreet cafe in the city center. On the day of the meeting, I arrived a little before the scheduled time, with a folder full of documents and evidence. I was nervous, but also determined. A few minutes later, Lisa entered the cafe, with her strong presence and confident posture. She approached the table where I was sitting and greeted me with a warm smile. "You must be Sarah," she said, holding out her hand. "Nice to meet you." "Yes, it's me," I replied, shaking her hand. "It's my pleasure, Lisa. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." We sat down and placed our orders. After a brief moment of casual conversation, Lisa got straight to the point. "So Sarah, what do you have for me?" she asked, with an attentive and curious look. I took a deep breath and began to tell my story, from Eric's unwanted advances to my abrupt dismissal. I showed her the emails, messages and documents I had collected so far. As I spoke, I could see Lisa's expression change from curiosity to a mix of indignation and determination. "This is really disturbing," Lisa said, looking through one of the emails. "And you mentioned that there are other colleagues who have been through similar situations." "Yes," I replied. "Rachel and Tom, for example. And I'm sure there are more people who haven't come forward for fear of retaliation." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "This has the potential to be a big story, Sarah. But we need more evidence and testimony to make sure there's no way they can get away with this. Do you think your colleagues would be willing to talk to me?" "I believe so," she said hopefully. "Rachel and Tom have already expressed their willingness to help. I can see if they agree to meet with you." "Great," Lisa replied. "We're going to need all the evidence we can get to build a solid case. And, of course, I'm going to start investigating the company as well. If they've already covered up other scandals, that needs to come to light." We spent the next few hours discussing the best way to expose the truth. Lisa had a clear plan. First, gather as much evidence as possible, then publish a series of articles that revealed the company's toxic culture and Eric's abuse. She also suggested that I give an exclusive interview to ensure my voice was heard. "Sarah, are you willing to do an interview?" asked Lisa, with a serious look. "It will put you in a vulnerable position, but it will also put a human face on the story. It could be the difference between an impactful article and real change." I thought for a moment, considering the implications. I knew this meant exposing my personal life and facing even more pressure. But I also knew it was an opportunity to make a real difference. "Yes," he said finally, firmly. "I'm willing to do the interview. I want people to know what happened and that this can't continue." Lisa smiled, satisfied. "Great. Let's do this right, Sarah. I promise I will do everything in my power to make sure your story is heard." Over the next few days, I organized meetings between Lisa and my colleagues who were willing to talk. Rachel and Tom were incredibly brave, sharing their own experiences and providing further evidence. Lisa also began looking into the company's background, discovering that this wasn't the first time they had covered up abusive behavior. As the investigation progressed, Lisa and I became a formidable team. I deeply admired her for her dedication and ability to fearlessly stand up to corporate power. I knew that with her by my side, we had a real chance to expose the truth and bring justice. Finally, the day of the interview arrived. We were in Lisa's office, with cameras and microphones ready. I sat down in the chair, nervous but determined. Lisa gave me an encouraging smile before we started. "Sarah, we're about to make history," she said. "Let's show the world what's really going on. And remember, you're not alone." I took a deep breath, ready to tell my story to the world. "Come on," I replied, confidently. "Let's do this." And so, with Lisa Harper's help, my fight for justice was about to become public, setting off a series of events that would change everything. My life was already a roller coaster when it all started, but the personal challenges I faced along the way made it even more complicated. When I was fired and decided to fight Eric's abuse, I knew my life would change drastically, but I wasn't prepared for the impact it would have on my relationship with David, my partner. David has always been my safe haven, the support I needed to face the ups and downs of life. However, as I began to investigate Eric and gather evidence against him, the tension and stress began to take a toll on our relationship. We spent nights arguing, and I saw the concern in David's eyes. He was overwhelmed and initially seemed distant. One night, after a particularly heated argument, I sat on the living room couch with a glass of wine in hand, trying to calm my nerves. David came over and sat next to me. "Sarah, I understand this is important to you, but it's consuming us," he said, his voice thick with concern. "I feel like I'm losing you to this battle." I looked at him and felt a pang of guilt. I knew he was right, but I also knew I couldn't give up. "David, I need to do this," I replied, trying to hold back the tears. "I can't let Eric go unpunished. It's not just for me, it's for all the other people he's harmed." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he did when he was trying to find the right words. "I know, Sarah. And I admire you for that. But we need to find a balance. We can't let this destroy what we have." Those words hit my heart. At that moment, I realized that in addition to fighting Eric and the company, I also needed to fight to keep my relationship intact. I decided that from that moment on I would make a conscious effort to balance my personal life and the investigation. Over time, David began to better understand my determination and slowly became a crucial part of my emotional support network. He started accompanying me to meetings with Rachel and Tom, and even Jake, our lawyer. His presence gave me strength and helped me maintain balance. I remember one night in particular when we were reviewing some proofs in my home office. David came in with 2 cups of tea and sat down next to me. "You're doing well, Sarah. We're all here to support you," he said, shaking my hand. Those words meant the world to me. Having David by my side gave me the courage to keep going, even when things got difficult. He became my confidant, my advisor and my rock. In addition to David, my family was also a great source of support. My mother, always worried, called me every day to see how I was. My father, a man of few words, sent me messages of encouragement. Knowing that I had their support gave me the strength I needed to face each new challenge. The investigation and legal battle were times of great stress and psychological pressure, but having a solid support network was critical to my sanity. David, my family, and my friends helped me maintain balance and perspective. On one of the final nights before the trial, David and I were lying in bed, talking about what was to come. He held my hand and looked into my eyes. "Sarah, no matter what happens, I'm proud of you. You're a brave and determined woman, and don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words gave me the final strength I needed. Knowing that I had David's unconditional support made me believe that, regardless of the outcome, I had done the right thing. The personal challenges were many, but they taught me the importance of having a strong support network and never underestimating the power of love and understanding. It was this solid foundation that allowed me to continue fighting and eventually achieve the justice I sought. With each passing day, I felt the pressure increase. Building a case against Eric Williams was not only an arduous task, but also emotionally draining. However, with the unwavering support of Rachel, Tom, Jake, and Lisa, I knew I was on the right path. "Sarah, you need to see this," Rachel said, entering the room with a laptop in hand. She sat next to me and opened a series of emails exchanged between Eric and another colleague of ours, who had also been harassed by him. "That's perfect, Rachel. These messages clearly show his pattern of behavior," I replied, feeling a mixture of relief and outrage. Each new piece of evidence was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it strengthened our case, but on the other, it reminded me of how many people had suffered at Eric's hands. Tom, who was on the other side of the room, was reviewing meeting recordings. Here's another recording where he makes inappropriate comments about another colleague's work. "And we also have the testimonies we've gathered so far," he said, holding up a notebook full of notes. "Great work, Tom. We need to make sure all of these testimonies are well documented and organized. Jake is going to need all of this to put together our legal strategy," I said, trying to remain calm and objective. Jake, our lawyer, was a real fortress. He always knew how to reassure me and at the same time prepare me for what was to come. "Sarah, this evidence is critical. But remember, the court can be ruthless. We need to be prepared for anything," he warned me during a meeting. "I know, Jake. I'm ready for this. I won't let him go unpunished," I replied with determination. Meanwhile, Lisa Harper, the investigative reporter, was doing her part to ensure the story had the impact it needed. "Sarah, I'm preparing a series of articles that will expose not only Eric, but also the company's toxic culture. We have to make sure public opinion is on our side," she told me during one of our meetings. "Lisa, I trust you. I know you're going to do an amazing job. We need people to know what's going on," I said, feeling the importance of her role in our fight. It was an intense period. We spent sleepless nights reviewing documents, cross-referencing information, and preparing our strategy. Every detail mattered. I knew I couldn't miss anything, as any failure could jeopardize our entire effort. One night, as we were reviewing emails, Rachel looked at me with a worried expression. "Sarah, are you okay? You look exhausted." "I'm tired, yes, Rachel. But I can't stop now. We need to make sure everything is perfect," I replied, trying to hide how tired I felt. "I know, but you also need to take care of yourself." "We're all here to help," Rachel insisted, showing how close our team was. David, my partner, was also a crucial support during this time. "Sarah, I know this is important to you. I'll be here, by your side, all the time," he told me one night when I was particularly down. "Thank you, David. Your support means the world to me," I replied, trying to hold back tears of exhaustion and gratitude. Finally, after weeks of hard work, our case was ready. We had emails, recordings, testimonies, and a clear narrative of Eric's abusive behavior. Jake was confident. "Sarah, we have a solid case here. Let's get justice, he said, with a determined gleam in his eyes. The trial date approached, and tension was in the air. But I knew that, with the team I had by my side, I was ready to face any challenge. It was time to take Eric and company to court and show the world the truth. Let's do this, I said, looking at Rachel, Tom, Jake and Lisa. We are ready. And so, with all the evidence gathered and the support of an incredible team, we prepared for the legal battle that was to come. I was determined to no longer be a silent victim and to ensure justice was served. When the trial began, the frenzy surrounding the case was palpable. The courtroom was packed, with journalists and onlookers occupying every available inch. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, but also the strength and support of my team and everyone who believed in me. Jake, my lawyer, was at my side, exuding unshakable confidence. Across the room, Eric Williams sat with his team of lawyers, looking more annoyed than concerned. The company had hired a team of renowned defenders, known for their aggressive and ruthless tactics. I knew they would do everything they could to discredit my story and undermine my credibility. During the first few days of the trial, Eric's lawyers used every dirty tactic possible. They brought in witnesses who tried to paint me as a problematic and unstable employee. They went so far as to manipulate facts and distort reality to make it seem like I was making everything up. At a particularly difficult moment, one of the lawyers insinuated that I had personal reasons for accusing Eric, suggesting that I was seeking revenge for an alleged failed relationship. Jake didn't let that go. He stood up, his voice firm and clear, and struck back with surgical precision. Miss Miller, Jake began, can you clarify for the court whether there was any type of personal relationship between you and Mr. Williams? No, there never was. I have always maintained a strictly professional relationship with Mr. Williams, I replied firmly, looking directly at the judge. Jake then turned to the defense attorney. This is a deplorable attempt to divert focus from the real issue here, Mr. Williams' abuse of power and harassment. In that moment, I felt a rush of gratitude for having Jake by my side. He knew exactly how to handle the situation, dismantling the unfounded accusations and bringing attention back to what really mattered. As the testimony progressed, we began to present our evidence. Rachel and Tom were key witnesses. Rachel described in detail the constant fear she lived in and how Eric regularly harassed her. I was paralyzed with fear whenever he approached my table, she said, her voice shaky but firm. Tom corroborated the countless emails and recordings we had documented, painting a clear picture of systemic abuse. The defense tried to pressure Tom, insinuating that he was exaggerating to help a friend. Mr. Tom, said one of the defense lawyers, don't you think you are exaggerating a little in your accusations? Tom, with impressive calm, responded, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling the truth. And the truth is that Eric Williams systematically and consistently abused his power. With each testimony, the courtroom became more tense. But I could feel the tide changing. The evidence was too damning to ignore. Jake did a brilliant job of presenting each piece of evidence, connecting the dots and building a solid case against Eric and the company. As the trial progressed, Lisa Harper, the investigative reporter, published a series of articles that generated a public outcry. She exposed not only my case, but also other cases that had been covered up by the company. Public opinion began to turn against Eric and the company, generating pressure that could not be ignored. Finally, the day of closing arguments arrived. Jake stood up and gave a powerful speech. This case isn't just about Sarah Miller, he began, it's about a system that allows people in positions of power to abuse their subordinates without consequence. Sarah had the courage to stand up and say enough. We cannot allow this continue. When the judge finally announced the verdict, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Eric Williams was found guilty, and the company was forced to review its harassment policies. It was a victory not just for me, but for all the victims who never had the chance to stand up and fight. The legal battle was grueling and full of challenges, but in the end, the truth prevailed. The feeling of justice was indescribable, and I knew this was just the beginning of a much-needed change in the corporate environment. When the trial finally began, I knew I would be entering a battlefield, but I was determined to fight to the end. Sitting next to Jake in the courtroom, I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. Eric was on the other side, looking arrogant, surrounded by expensive lawyers. But I had something he didn't: the truth and a dedicated team. During the first few days of the trial, the company tried everything to discredit my story. They brought in witnesses who painted a false picture of me as a problematic employee. But Jake was prepared. He skillfully counterattacked, questioning each witness and exposing inconsistencies in their testimony. On the third day, something unexpected happened. A woman I had never seen before stood up in the courtroom gallery and asked to speak. She introduced herself as Laura, a former employee of the company who had also been victimized by Eric. "My name is Laura Martinez. I worked at the company for 5 years and was harassed by Eric for 2 of those years. I left because I couldn't take the abuse anymore," she began, her voice shaky but full of determination. Laura's revelation was a huge blow to Eric's defense. And she wasn't the only one. Inspired by Laura's courage, other women began speaking out, both in court and on social media. Each new testimony was a piece of the puzzle that showed a clear pattern of abusive behavior and the company's complicity. Rachel and Tom, who had been by my side throughout this journey, gave me a big hug after Laura finished her statement. "You are paving the way for so many people, Sarah." "This is amazing," said Rachel, with tears in her eyes. Jake, ever the professional, rode the tide of new testimony. He called each of the new witnesses to the stand, allowing their stories to be heard. The impact was enormous. The evidence we had gathered, combined with the new testimony, made it impossible for Eric's defense to continue denying the truth. Lisa Harper, the investigative reporter, was present at every court session, furiously taking notes. At the end of each day, she published articles detailing the events of the trial, bringing even more public attention to the case. The pressure on the company increased with each new article. "Sarah, you're doing it. The stories are all over the news. People are finally seeing what's going on here," Lisa said in one of our many evening meetings, as we prepared the next strategy. The company, desperate, tried to offer a deal. They wanted me to drop the case in exchange for a considerable sum of money. Jake handed me the settlement papers with a serious expression. "Sarah, it's your decision. But remember what we're fighting for here," he said, his eyes fixed on mine. I didn't even need to think much. "No, Jake. I will not accept. This isn't just about me. It's about all the people who suffered at the hands of this man and this company's toxic culture. Let's go until the end." When the day of the verdict finally arrived, the courtroom was packed. The tension was palpable. The judge read the verdict aloud, finding Eric guilty of multiple counts of harassment and the company responsible for covering up his actions. Upon hearing the verdict, I felt a wave of relief and emotion wash over me. Rachel and Tom hugged me, and tears of joy ran down my face. David, my partner, who had been my pillar of support, was there, smiling proudly. Jake shook my hand. "You did it, Sarah. You made history here." The following days were an avalanche of emotions and commitments. Lisa Harper published a series of articles exposing the company's toxic culture, leading to a wave of public outrage. The victory was not just mine, it belonged to everyone who had the courage to speak out. The truth finally came out, and with it, hope for a better future for all the employees who had suffered in silence. My fight was far from over, but this was a huge step in the right direction. When the moment for the court decision finally arrived, I was a nervous wreck. All the effort, all the sleepless nights, all the tears shed, and all the accumulated frustration were about to culminate in a verdict that could change my life and the lives of many others. I felt prepared, but uncertainty still hung in the air. We were all in court, me, my lawyer Jake, Rachel, Tom, and of course Lisa, the reporter who had become an invaluable friend. The judge entered the room and we all stood up. The silence was palpable. I looked at Jake, who gave me a small nod, as if to say, "It'll work out." I took a deep breath and waited. After what seemed like hours, but was probably just minutes. The judge began to speak. After reviewing all of the evidence and hearing all of the testimony, this court finds that Eric Williams is guilty of the charges of sexual harassment and abuse of power. I couldn't believe it. I had one. Tears of relief and joy began to stream down my face. Rachel hugged me tightly, and Tom screamed in celebration. Jake smiled at me with a look of mission accomplished. Eric Williams, the man who tried to destroy me, had been fired and now faced criminal charges. But the victory was not just mine. It was a collective victory. The company, pressured by public opinion and Lisa's exposure, was forced to review its harassment policies. Strict new measures have been implemented to protect employees. I met with the company's board and, together with Jake and other lawyers, we drafted a new code of conduct. Sarah, I can't tell you how much your courage has meant to all of us, Rachel said during one of our meetings. You not only changed my life, but the lives of many other people. I didn't do this alone. You all were a fundamental part of this, I replied, with a genuine smile. And now it's our responsibility to make sure these changes are actually implemented. In addition to Rachel and Tom, several of Eric's other victims decided to speak out. Inspired by my courage, they found the strength to tell their stories. This helped to further reinforce the need for systemic changes in the company. The toxic culture that allowed Eric to act with impunity for so long has begun to be dismantled. Lisa, who continued to follow the story closely, published a series of articles about the new developments and the company's efforts to repair the damage. Sarah, your story is not just a story of revenge and overcoming. It's a story of change and hope, she said during one of our conversations. I hope it inspires others not to be silent, I replied. Over time, I began to realize that my struggle didn't end there. There was a long way to go to ensure that the new policies were not only implemented but also followed to the letter. I was asked to lead a corporate ethics initiative at a large technology company. I accepted the challenge, determined to continue my fight for justice. Sarah, we're proud of you, Jake said during our last meeting before I started my new job. Not only have you won a legal battle, but you are also helping to transform an entire industry. Thank you, Jake. I couldn't have done it without you and everyone else. But the fight continues. There's still a lot to be done. My story has become a symbol of resistance and courage. I received countless messages of support from people who felt inspired to fight injustices in their own workplaces. And so, with the support of everyone around me, I continued my journey, determined to make a difference and transform the system, one step at a time. After the court victory, I should have been feeling immense relief, but something inside me told me that the battle wasn't over yet. Eric Williams, even convicted, was a cunning and influential man. He would not accept defeat so easily. And I was right. Sarah, you need to see this, said Lisa Harper, the investigative reporter who had become my inseparable ally on this journey, as she showed me a message on her cell phone. It was an anonymous tip about Eric's plan to escape criminal charges. He's planning to flee the country, Lisa continued, her expression mixed with concern and determination. We can't let that happen. That night, we gathered our trusted team, Rachel, Tom, and Jake. The atmosphere was tense, but everyone knew we couldn't let our guard down. We have to act quickly, emphasized Jake Thompson, my dedicated lawyer. If Eric manages to escape, it will be a blow not only to you, Sarah, but to all the victims who trusted us. We'll monitor his every move, said Tom, the systems analyst, as he adjusted his glasses. I have some contacts who can help us track your financial activities and travel. Rachel, ever the strategist, suggested, what if we made an anonymous tip to the authorities about his plan? That might speed things up. Yes, but we need concrete proof, I replied, feeling the adrenaline rush through my body. Lisa, do you think you can get more information from your sources? I'll do it right now, Lisa replied, already picking up the phone. The next morning, Lisa returned with news. My sources confirmed, Eric is trying to bribe an official to obtain false documents and flee to a country without an extradition treaty with the United States. That's a crime in itself, Jake said, clenching his fists. "We will inform the authorities immediately." With the evidence in hand, we filed the complaint. Authorities were skeptical at first, but the evidence was irrefutable. Eric was arrested while trying to board a private flight. "You did it, Sarah," said David, my partner, who had become a pillar of emotional support throughout this fight. "He won't escape this time." Eric's arrest was widely publicized, and the public reaction was intense. I became a symbol of resilience and courage, but I knew my journey was just beginning. A month later, I received an unexpected offer. A large technology company, known for its corporate ethics, asked me to lead a new corporate ethics initiative. "Sarah, we want you to bring your experience and determination to our company," said the CEO during the meeting. "We believe you can make a real difference here." I accepted the offer. Not only because it was an incredible opportunity, but because I knew I could continue my fight for justice in an even more impactful way. "Let's make a difference, Sarah," Rachel said when I shared the news with my team. "You have the support of all of us." On my first day at the new company, I was greeted with a warm applause. I felt a rush of emotions as I realized how much my story had touched so many lives. "Sarah, you are an inspiration to us all," said a young employee, with tears in her eyes. "Because of you, I had the courage to report the harassment I was experiencing." I hugged her and felt deep gratitude. My fight had not been in vain. I had turned pain into a driving force to change the system. And so, my journey continued. Determined to make a difference, fight injustice, and create a safer and fairer environment for everyone. My story was not just about revenge, but about overcoming, courage, and the ability to transform the world with determination and support. "Let's keep fighting, together," I told my team, with a confident smile. "This is just the beginning."